How would you use Spring WebFlux to consume data from an external services in a non-blocking manner and process this data reactively within your Spring Boot application? In a Spring Boot app using WebFlux, I would use web client to fetch data from an external services without slowing things down. Web client makes it easy to get data in a way that does not stop other parts of the app from working. When the data comes in, it's handled reactively, meaning I can work with it on the go, like filtering or changing it without waiting for everything to finish loading. This keeps the app fast and responsive even when dealing with a lot of data or making many requests. Imagine you need to develop a REST API in a Spring Boot application that allows clients to manage user data. Explain how would you structure your application. To build a REST API in Spring Boot for managing user data, I would organize the app into three main parts, that is controllers, services and repositories. Controllers would deal with web requests using endpoints like /users to handle different actions, getting, adding, updating and deleting user information. Services would focus on apps logic like checking if a user's data meets certain criteria before saving it. Repositories would connect to the database to actually save, update or fetch user data. This setup keeps everything neat and makes it easier to update parts of the app without affecting others. Imagine you are designing a Spring Boot application that interfaces with the multiple external APIs. How would you handle API rate limits and failures? To handle API rate limits and failures in a Spring Boot application, I would use a circuit breaker to manage the failures. And next, I will implement rate limiting to avoid exceeding API limits. Add a retry mechanism with exponential backup for temporary issues. Use caching to reduce the number of requests. This approach helps to keep the application reliable and efficient. You need to deploy a Spring Boot application to a cloud platform, that is example AWS or Azure. What steps would you take and how would you configure the application properties for different environments? To deploy a Spring Boot app to the cloud like AWS or Azure, first I would package it using a Maven or Gradle. Next, I would pick a cloud service that makes deployment easy, such as AWS Elastic, Beanstalk or Azure App Services for different settings in development, staging and production. I would use Spring profiles as well. I would make sure separate property files for each environment like application dev.properties. For development, when deploying, I would choose the right profile for that environment, making sure the app uses the correct settings. This way the app runs smoothly in any environment with the right configurations. Explain how would you use application events in Spring Boot to notify different parts of our application about significant activities. In Spring Boot, to let different parts of the app know about important activities, I would use application events. First, I would create special event classes for different types of activities, like when a new user signs up, then I would write listeners for these events, which are just pieces of code that wait for a specific event to happen and then do nothing in response. To tell the app when something important happens, I would publish these events from anywhere in the app. This way, parts of the app can communicate and react to events without being directly connected, keeping the code clean and organized.